And there you have it. The markets are officially closed on this Wednesday, May 20th. Welcome, investors and traders. I'm AJ Monty with Sticky Trades. And as we speak, many investors around the U.S. are waiting for Nvidia earnings to come out. We have a lot of ideas to talk to you about with regard to how we might see the manipulation coming out. So we're going to keep a close eye on the minute-by-minute chart. And before we get more into this earnings announcement, let me bring on Nod from a Nod Live news feed so he could give you some of the headlines and what our members have been informed about. And then we're going to go from there. Remember, we're going to take your ticker symbols today. So if you're joining us on X, you might want to hop on over to our YouTube channel and take advantage of that chat box, which is already rolling. Welcome, folks. Robin India is there, Absurd Nerd. ECM is there with us. And so, Nod, why don't you take it away and we'll keep an eye on these charts. Go right ahead.
Thank you, AJ. And you're right. Everyone's watching for NVIDIA, but welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us either live or on the recording. U.S. equities today did jump as oil prices and U.S. Treasury yields did slide on growing optimism that the conflict in the Middle East could be resolved soon. Traders are also looking forward to NVIDIA's first quarter earnings, AJ, which are going to interrupt us once again. Today, the Fed minutes did come out, and many preferred removing the easing bias from the statement, with many of them saying that they likely see a hike warranted if inflation persists. ADP data came out yesterday showing a surprising strength in hiring, as with all these headlines that we're seeing with large companies like Meta doing their firing. But this is also going to make it harder for the Fed to cut rates, AJ, and think that they're going to have to raise rates. So I want you to see this chart real quick. Check this out. Over the last year, we've spoken about market concentration, AJ. Well, the S&P has never, ever, ever been more concentrated in two stocks than it is right now, with Nvidia, which again is about to report, and Apple. AJ, both of those names make up 15% of the index. So I'm just curious of your thoughts on both of those names and what you're seeing with the amount of stocks that are trading above their 100-day moving average.
Well, you know, we've got NVIDIA here, obviously already on the move before the earnings even comes out.
Right.
Look at this minute-by-minute chart. You can see they're already pumping it. So someone's gotten some kind of leading news, perhaps, but they're already trying to pump it. So here's, before we get into what you just asked me, and we'll look at those charts, I think we're going to see NVIDIA jump about anywhere between 13 and 15 points. I'll tell you why I think that in a minute when we look at the options on this. And then after that, I think they're going to sell right into it. So we're going to have to see. I just don't believe that the analysts are going to get their earnings wrong on this one, with it being the number one market cap at $5.4 trillion. You got one stock basically moving the whole market right now. But going back to what you mentioned with regard to the moving averages, we look at this one quite often. And this is the SPX and the letter A50R. You see that on my top left corner for those of you who have your reading glasses on. So it's SPX, the letter A, the number 50, and then R. Today, we just moved slightly above that 50% mark. Now, what that means is that right now, 52% of the S&P stocks are above their 50-day moving average. However, that's the shorter term moving average. If I change that 50 to 100, it's going to look a little bit different.
Right.
In that we have now only 47% of the stocks in the S&P are above the 100-period moving average, which is a more significant moving average. So while I do believe NVIDIA is going to rally and bring the markets up, at least for the next couple of days, I think they're going to sell into it. And then the S&P most likely is going to bump its head up against that 100-day moving average. Now, for those of you who want to take a look at the S&P and not really have the tail more or less wagging the dog here with these major market caps moving, you take a look at SPXEW. This is a ticker symbol that gives you the equal weight for the S&P. And interestingly enough, we're still bumping our heads against this resistance up here that I drew last week. Now, yes, there is a bullish engulfing candle here today, which again is leading me more to the upside for the rest of the week. But the big signal, or I guess you could say reaction, is going to be an actual close over that resistance. And if we get that close in the S&P and we get a good strong volume push, we could see the SPX start to rally. Now, I know some of our VIPs were selling call spreads that expired today. I would refrain from that. Again, I'm telling you how I would treat this. I would refrain from selling any negative delta at this point on the SPX, because you could get caught in a pretty bad place there by being short, especially in the option markets. Now, not hopping to DIA, I just want to go over this. Maybe we could do this a little bit early. Hold on, let me just do one last check, see what NVIDIA is doing here in the after hours. All right, so they bumped it, but they're not quite convinced yet of the news. We don't have it. So now what I'm going to ask you, if you can
Sure.
keep on that, I'm not going to be able to keep an eye on the news and look at these charts at the same time. Let me
I
know
got you.
the minute you see that, because I want to show everyone the reaction here on Nvidia. But if we go to DIA and you look at what we have, you have to understand that the majority of our positions here at Sticky Trades, the member positions that I publish, 73%, almost 74% of those spread trades are bullish. Now, that's not including the directional trades that we get into, like we did today in the silver market with PSLV. And so we're still looking for upside. However, we are preparing for a potential downside, either correction or worse. We don't know, because with the national debt the way it is right now, you have to understand that the interest on that debt is over $1 trillion a year just to finance the debt. So obviously, if Warsh comes in and starts saying, well, guess what, Mr. President, I really can't lower rates. We got to go higher to hedge against inflation. That's going to put more stress on our government to finance this debt, which is going to be a big problem. Now, looking at the other side, I was doing some research on this and what could happen if they, in fact, go the opposite and lower rates, which would be a big surprise. But what that would do, it would force money out of savings accounts, out of cash, out of the US dollar, and perhaps throw it into the bond market, or maybe even into the equity markets. Otherwise, what do investors have? What are you going to do? You're going to put all your money into a 2% dividend or a 2% interest rate, and then only have inflation gobbling it all up. Cash is not a good investment right now. And I don't think it's going to be a good investment in the future. So that's why when we get into silver miners, we trade. Our goal here, if you're brand new to this channel, our goal is to show people how to make money. And we're doing a really good job of that. Yeah, we take a lot of flack from the trolls that are on there saying, oh, well, aren't you long-term bearish? Yeah, I could be long-term bearish and still have 73% of my positions being long because of what I'm seeing on the short-term charts. So don't confuse my long-term stance with the short-term play and how we're getting in and out of the option markets, because they're doing extremely well. You could ask any of our members on the chat here. They'll tell you how well we're doing with the percentage of accuracy and in our positions. Now, I'm not making income claim, of course, nor am I giving any kind of guarantee of returns. I can only tell you what I do. And in my trading, I shoot for 60% a year annualized. And our members all know that because I talk about that quite often. 60% of the year, 60% on the year in shorter term positions. And then I have longer term investments that are mainly in precious metals, gold, silver, and such, and also in real estate. So I don't think you could go wrong. Again, these are my views. I don't think you could go wrong with raw agricultural land. I'm not talking about investing in investment properties or anything like that, because that's not what I'm interested in right now. Been there, done that kind of thing. I'm interested in just buying up raw land, because I tell you, I've never met anyone who's bought land long-term and lost money on that property. I think that's one of the safest bets around. And that's why they call them land banks. So we still don't have anything out from Nvidia, Nod. I'm surprised. I'm very surprised.
It's supposed to come out at 10 minutes after, which is right now. So I'll interrupt you probably in the next
Okay,
45
yes,
seconds.
cut me off mid-sentence. So here's one other thing I want to show you. IWM did a great job hitting my downside target here. And many of you know, especially in our membership, is that a lot of the time, but not all, a lot of the time when downside targets hit, we generally get reverses from those targets, whether it be up or down. And while these downside targets are still open, you'll notice why I have that downside target, mainly because of that gap. See, once that gap fills, my target will hit, and then what will most likely happen after that target hits? It'll reverse from the gap fill point. And so that's why most of the time when my targets hit, you'll see price reversals. And speaking of which, from last Wednesday, it's pretty exciting, Nod, because our percentages are going up with regard to the number of hits on our target hit rate.
Over 50%. It's crazy.
In 5 trading days since last Wednesday, 50% of the targets established last Wednesday during our rapid fire session have already hit. That's way above average, but we're hitting the higher percentages week after week. So the averages are starting to go up simply because the hit rate is going up. And I don't know if we have a scan code for the 15-day free trial so people can get in on the rapid fire tonight from 6 to 7. But everyone from the general public here is more than welcome to attend for free. You don't have to give us any money. You don't have to give us credit cards, none of that. You click on the scan code, go there, sign up, and then come plug in, and we record everything. So everything that I do, whether it be a target forecast or market forecast, we are recording everything so that we can go back if we need to and reference what was said exactly to the word. And so that is what we're looking at. Now, going back to, I want to look at VIX, which is related to the S&P. Interestingly enough, we still have an open gap above the market here. I have that highlighted with that blue bar. That is an open gap. But today, look down below. Today, we have a bearish engulfing candle on the VIX, which 80% of the time when you see that happen, prices drop. So we have a bearish engulfing, followed by a bearish engulfing, followed by a bearish engulfing. So the VIX is most likely going to drop, which again is leading me more to the upside than to the downside. And with the VIX more or less related to the S&P, I still have my upside target on SPY from last week up here, right around 755. Whether or not we hit that by Friday, I don't know. But if we do, guess what? We're probably going to hit that target and then pull back, and then we get the downside target right back into the line of discussion here. So that is how we're looking at the general markets. And I got to say, silver, and I'm going to talk about this ahead of time while we're not stalling, because we could cover a lot of ground before Nvidia comes out. If you follow me on X, PSLV was what I put out today. Our members got in this morning at 24. I could tell this because it's now made public. 24.16 is where our members got in. And at the time, the gap was still open up here. So after the alert went out to buy that at 24.16, the gap later filled, and we still have an open gap up here. So I'm still bullish on the silver miners, gold, the gold ETFs. I love it. And if you're following me on X with the XRP trade, okay, let me get the XRP up. On X, I put out an XRP trade where if you look at this one here, this is, by the way, this is from the Coinbase charting platform. That's why it's a different color. You can see we have a bullish Harami today on XRP. So I bought all into it right here at this level of 136. And this horizontal line is a roll reversal right there. So former resistance back here was broken, holds as support. Today, I think we're going to see that support hold again. And then I think we're going to be followed by a pivot point higher. Look down below. The stochastics are showing a buy signal. And so if you want to go ahead and follow my trades on X, just type in hashtag AJXRP trades or hashtag AJSLV trades, and you can pull up all those charts, and you'll get the trades right after our members get them, because that's what benefits of being a member, right? Membership has its privileges, so the not live crowd gets that way before.
Yeah, we get them early. They get them 5 to 10 minutes before the wild gets them. So it's pretty great. It's a nice perk. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're starting to see. I can't say that it's my posts. We don't call them tweets anymore, but I can't say it's my posts that are moving the markets, because I think there's a lot of technicians out there that are looking at XRP and silver and they're trading it technically. So I can say that after these publications go out, we are seeing almost an immediate move in the direction of where we're pointing on the charts. So that's a good thing. So Nod, again, I don't see any news. I don't know.
No news. Twitter is saying it's been delayed till 4:20, so that's in 3.5 minutes. So we'll see. I don't know if there's an issue. I don't know, but
you know why? You know why?
Yeah.
When did that? See, we called it Twitter. We slip every now and then.
I know, sorry.
But still, look at this. It's already skittish. So does bad news or no news mean good news, or does delayed news mean bad news? We don't know. We really don't know. But we got a lot of volatility here because Nvidia has already gotten down right around to the 223 level here on this 1 minute candle, up to 224. So it's going up and down by about $1 here in this very tight range before the earnings does come out. But Nod, let's take a look at some of the other ticker symbols while we're waiting for Nvidia, because I'm really going to be curious to see how they push this either way, up or down. What do you got there?
Yeah, I mean, Tafe was in early, and he was asking if you can take a look at either Micron or SanDisk. Both in the memory space, both have been kind of unidirectional, but have seen some corrections lately. What are you seeing now?
Yeah, this is definitely a correction here, I would say. This also, to me, looks like an ABCD pattern forming. If you're not familiar with an ABCD, it's basically, it looks like a lightning bolt. Okay, so the top pivot would be A, a pivot up from the next low would be B, and then a pivot lower from wherever that bounce point is C, and that generally leads to a lower D. So we have A right at the top, and today, because of the higher low, higher high, we could put a B here. However, that's a hanging man candle. So any point lower, any pivot lower from here will lead us to the C, ultimately to a lower D, which would be right around these gap fill levels here. There's 2 open gaps below the market. So while I wouldn't take a long position in this, I can't say that I would feel comfortable taking a short position either, not until we get this pivot lower. And again, SanDisk, we've been keeping a good handle on, keeping a good eye on that one, because one of our VIPs, Fred, hopefully, okay, Fred, asks me for this all the time. I still have an open gap on SanDisk at right around $1,189 down there. Here's another ABCD that we could put a B right at that moving average, and then any kind of a pivot lower from here will probably bring us back down to the 1189 or 1190 level. So yeah, this is not for the faint of heart to be trading this, but the options, even the option traders, these are extremely expensive options. The volatility is crazy, but if you want to have a good time and you have enough money, you could trade SanDisk. If not, you could go with MU and trade its younger cousin. We'll put it that way. Now, Nod, there was some ETFs that you wanted me to look at with regard to the miners and even the builders. What did you have there?
We've got a new Fed chair coming in. The Fed is in a bit of a pickle, and some are looking for cuts, some are looking for hikes. But this indecision, which our friend Tim Lindsay will tell us, has put people in indecision, which is the worst. So XLB, that's a materials ETF tied to housing, and then the mining, another ETF is XME. Those two are pretty good indicators. So would you mind giving a look at those?
Yeah, I can tell you right now, these are, I'll say it this way, based on the technicals, XLB is extremely bullish looking right now. And I say extremely because there has already been an extreme pullback from the 20 period moving average. And you could notice that in the past, when we've had that kind of divergence from the moving average, it tends to snap back pretty well, at least in a little bit of a pivot here. And so I think we're due for a snapback to the moving average. And there is the possibility we could see some movement right up to the gap fill points up here, right around 52. Now, with it trading 49.70 and change, move up to 52. What are you talking? That's about two
All
and
right,
a half.
AJ, we're out. Here's the Nvidia's numbers.
Okay, what do they got? Let's see.
All right, so revenue beat by 2 billion. EPS was higher.
Ooh, they're
Revenue
selling
guidance
into
was
it.
higher. Yeah, but it looks like they're selling the news on it. But I just posted it in the chat here.
See, now if they're selling it here, again, this is only 1 minute, but you could see the knee-jerk reaction. This thing dropped, $4 in seconds. And we'll have to see how this plays out. But you have to understand that the option markets are expecting a 13-point move up or down. Right now, it looks like it's going to the lower level. So that will ultimately lead it to around 209, right? And it looks like they're hating it right now. So this is one where they're selling onto the news. Now, you might say, well, how did I come up with that $13 move in the stock? Well, if you go to the options here, this is a good rule of thumb to get into. If you go to the options and you look at the at the money options for next Friday's expiration, you take the total premium of the calls and the puts, which is going to be about $13 to $14. You take $10 plus a $4 put, you got $14 there. So that's what the option traders are expecting to see, up or down. Now, if you have a Thinkorswim platform, here's a quick little lesson combined with a tip. You look at the number here that's in parentheses all the way to the right. I don't know if you could see that, but it's plus or minus 15.006. So there you go, 15. And that's how they base the volatility, is on what the option traders are looking at, up or down. So they throw that into the volatility calculation, and that's what you got right there. So we're looking at this right now. They're hating it. Let's see if it gets all the way down to 209. Now, you have to understand something, folks. This is the #1 market cap in the world right now. And if this one tanks tomorrow on the opening, let's say the fund managers will hold a bunch of this, get a tap on the shoulder from their risk managers saying you got to lighten up on the position.
I've gotten a few of those. Mercy, it's not.
Yeah, I remember that when I traded at Nash Weiss, which ultimately became Mayer and Schweitzer. When actually it was the other way, Mayer and Schweitzer, and then Nash Weiss. I traded for both of them. Marty Cunningham, I don't know if he listens to the program here, but Marty Cunningham was the top trader, the head trader, and he would look at all the positions. And if you had too big of a position, he wouldn't have to say a word. All he'd do is tap you on the shoulder, and you knew exactly what he was talking about, because that's the position that you knew was the biggest risk position. So those fund managers don't make all of the decisions by themselves. There are risk parameters that they have to follow. They call that the drawdown. And if they have to sell Nvidia, guess what's going to happen tomorrow? The market's going to open up lower, and then we're going to most likely be in a ride for the rest of the week. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. One more glance, see what's going on. There it goes, on their way. It's on its way lower. We'll see whether or not they try to buy this. But here's an ABCD pattern zigzagging its way. They might try to. Here's the A. I'll show you how this works live. Here's the B. If we get a pivot lower, any lower from the A, it's going to bring us all the way back down by tomorrow. Okay, so we'll follow that minute by minute, and we'll keep you posted on that one. So keep an eye on that, right? Keep an eye on the after hours, not to make anyone get stressed out or get agita, but you're most likely going to see a pivot lower here in the next minute or two. And I would say maybe even in the next minute. There's the long shadow showing up, so probably going to get pivot lower with a red candle. All right. Remember that. This is recorded, and we'll be able to go back and check the tape on that one. All right. So now going back to what you were talking about, we were looking at XLB, and I
Yes.
really like that one. Now, if any of you are interested in picking up our 7-point trading algorithm, this is open to the general public. You do not have to be a member for this. You could just go in there, type in XLB or XME, and it's going to give you the signals right here. Now, you have to understand something. This is delayed by 1 day. So the update on this chart will come in probably by 5 o'clock. And at that time, you will see a bullish candle because we just saw the big green candle show up today. Now, let me go down and show you how this algorithm analyzes the charts. Looks at the candle, looks at the volume, looks at the divergences from the moving averages, look at the oscillators, and there you go. So today we closed with a bullish candle. So that's why that one's blank right here. But in about a half hour, or definitely by tomorrow morning, you're going to have a check mark on the bullish side, which is going to give you 7 out of the 7 signals showing bullish. Now, what this algorithm has done, thanks to Andrew Faldi, our programmer and partner in this, is he's taken 40 somewhat years of my trading experience, and through the way I think and look at charts, he's threw that into thousands of lines of code so that you more or less have me as your analyst in your back pocket just by putting this in. Now, when we looked at XME, because I already pre-programmed this so it wouldn't take time, here's another one that if I scan down is only leaving one open, which today will be a green check mark. So here's another one. You will have 7 out of 7 buy signals coming in. Now, if we look at this again on the daily chart, putting in XME, this is a very handy tool, by the way. It's the least expensive out of all the tools that we have on the board for you. Here you have a pivot combined with a hammer candles. There's bullish. Now, did anyone ask for this nod, or does anyone have a stock related to this sector? I could go and put a forecast out for the record, because we're only 2.5 minutes left in this.
Well, Eric Johnson, he's a user of our 7-point checklist. He says, good afternoon. With SCO, it's hitting 6 of the 7 indicators. Can you look at that? So I thought that was
a ticker. What's the ticker?
Sierra Charlie Oscar.
Oh, SCO. Okay. Well, yeah, that might look good short term, but I don't like that big trend at all. I don't like that at all. And that's crude oil. I mean, I think you could go a little bit higher on this one because of the gap, but it's going to bump its head against that moving average like it has all year here. See, it tried to get over the moving average, closed below it. Here it went over the moving average, showed a shooting star. Here's a moved over the moving average and closed with a bearish engulfing. So the best I could do on this one, although it's a cheap stock, I definitely would not be buying that one. I would put an upside target on that one to 649, and that's it. So you don't have much. You got only 26 cents of upside on a $6 stock, which isn't so bad if you're trading it. But I certainly would not be investing in that one at all. So Eric, be really, really careful with that one, because this is, just yesterday set a new 52-week low. Not a good idea to practice buying stocks that are on new 52-week lows. Now we could take one more from the audience. Then we're going to have to, believe it or not, start to get into our wrap-up and get prepared for the rapid fire at 6 o'clock.
I know. So, this day is fun. Well, listen, Isaiah is asking for HIMS, HIMS. He says, do you see an upside bias in HIMS?
Yeah, here's a different one. Much, much different. Now, I like this one. I don't get crazy just because I like it. Doesn't mean you got to load up on it. But the reason I like this one is if you look, this is in a trading channel, and it's pivoting up today from that trend line. Drew crooked, but you could do it like this. You just go right here and go right there, and you got a channel line running parallel to that. So here you have your pivot. Okay, here is your A, B, C, D. Remember, here's A. Remember what I just said. Here's your low B. It pivoted up, had a C, and then immediately reversed down to a lower D. There's your A, B, C, D. See that? But now that D is reached and we have a pivot higher, you're most likely going to see an A, B, C, D zigzag up to a higher D to fill the gap. You see? So now, I'll have to rely on you for this one. I think you're going to get about 4, maybe 5 buy signals on the algorithm as I go ahead and put this target in here. Why don't you go search the algorithm and tell me if we got at least 4 buy signals on that? I would go up on this one.
Yeah,
To,
HIOS is 6 bullish, no bearish.
oh, it does have 6 bullish. Okay,
Yep.
that's
The
very
only one that
interesting.
doesn't have is pattern recognition.
Okay, well then it will show higher with the pivot here today. So I would put an upside target. I'll go up a little bit more to 25 on that one. So so you've got potential for $2 more. What is that, 8% on that $23 stock? So for an equity trade, that looks real good. For an option trade, I'll throw it out there. How would I trade this on the option? I'd probably go out to November, and I would be buying maybe the $26 or $27 calls around here for around 4.5. And then once that target hits, I'd be bailing out, taking my profits, moving on to the next stock. Nod, we didn't run out of content. We didn't run
Ran
out
out
of
of time.
ticker symbols. We just ran out of time. Folks, thank you so much for joining us. We do this every Wednesday right after the close for 30 minutes, and then we follow it up from 6 to 7 on a rapid fire stock analysis where I take 50 stocks, analyze them in 60 minutes, and I actually give you the targets for each one of those stocks. So hopefully you could join us there. Thanks, Nod. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you next time. So long.